tuning in to my talk. This is Piecing It Together, a deep dive into the interactive music systems of my game Divinuet. My name is Megan Carnes. I am a composer and game designer. I am obsessed with interactive music, so I decided to make my own interactive music games. This new one is a game that generates music based on tarot readings. So, I'd like to ask that if y'all have any questions that you save them towards the end, because I'm not going to be looking at the chat until then. Let's get started. I'm actually going to turn my video off for this because I want to make sure I'm not blocking any slides. Alright. So, what is Divinuet? I'm assuming this is not a word that many of you have heard. So Divinuet is a musical tarot reading experience. Essentially, you get a tarot reading and you get a different musical experience depending on your cards. There are 78 tarot cards in a deck, and each one has a unique meaning, which allows me to write a wide variety of different music, which is very fun. And then they combine in all these different fun ways, which I will get into a little later. Readings are always made of 3 cards, allowing for tens of thousands of possible combinations. It might even be in the hundreds of thousands. I haven't done the math exactly, but it's a lot. And then, for those of you who are curious, the title Divinuet is a combination of the words divination and minuet. I wanted something that reflected both the tarot and the music. So our sound designer, Emgawer, came up with that. So big props to them for coming up with what I think is a very cool game title. Alright, so I'm not going to get into very much tarot stuff, but there is a little bit that you need to know to be able to understand what I'm talking about. So here is a short little crash course on tarot. So there are 2 different kinds of tarot cards. The major arcana represent like big life moments, just very important things. If you believe in like the divine or fate or anything like that, these cards kind of have to do with that. And then the minor arcana represent more kind of day-to-day sort of things. The minor arcana have 4 suits. There are swords, which represent like intellect and smarts and that kind of thing. There are the cups, which represent creativity, emotions, relationships. The pentacles represent like material wealth, earthly things, that sort of thing. And then the wands represent like passion and fire and going after what you want, that kind of thing. Each suit has ace through 10s, so they have the numbers, and then they have 4 court cards: the pages, the knights, the queens, and the kings. So the way you do a tarot spread is generally you will ask the cards a kind of general question or a topic, like, hey, what do I need to know about my career? Or, hey, I want to do a check-in, see how I'm doing in general, just check in on myself. So spreads can be any number of cards, but I did 3 cards since tarot cards are always 3-card spreads, so I just use these as an example. So the rectangles kind of represent where your cards would go, and then these on the bottom represent what each card would represent. So for example, this would be like a chronological spread where card 1 would be the past, card 2 would be the present, card 3 would be the future. Or like this is a self-check-in spread where card 1 represents your mind, card 2 is your body, card 3 is your spirit. Okay, so those are the basics of tarot, so now we can actually get into the music stuff. Divinuet's main phases, there are 2 of them. The first one is the reading phase, and this is where you actually get your spread, see your cards, get your card definitions, and you hear each card's individual theme. So this is kind of what you see while the reading phase is happening. There are 2 things you see. While the interlude music is playing, and I'll get into what that is in a bit, you see kind of this. So you see your actual spread, you see what you've chosen each card to represent, and you see what the cards are. Then after each card fades in, because these will fade in one at a time, so after each card fades in, a definition will pop up, and this is when the actual individual card theme will play. So essentially what you hear while this is going on is the interlude, card 1 theme, interlude, card 2 theme, interlude, card 3 theme, interlude. So, pretty straightforward. So I'm now going to play some of the card themes for you. There are 78 of these, since there are 78 tarot cards. Each is somewhere between like 40 and 50 seconds usually. And I've selected 3 pretty different ones just to kind of show you the variety. This first one is the Ace of Cups. The Ace of Cups represent kind of love and creativity and good feelings. The aces are basically the suits in their purest form. So here is the Ace of Cups theme. Okay, the next theme we're going to hear is for the Moon. The Moon is a major arcana card, and you can tell because it's not any one suit, and it kind of represents the unknown and illusion and maybe a bit of anxiety about facing the unknown. Okay, and the last one I'm going to show you is the King of Pentacles. The pentacles are very fun because they kind of represent like wealth and money and stuff, so I made a lot of them very like fancy Baroque. And the kings tend to be like the leaders of their suits, so just imagine this representing like a leader who's very good at collecting resources and spreading them amongst his people and just leading a very prosperous community. Okay, so yeah, like I said, those are individual card themes. Those play while you're seeing the definition of whatever card you got, and there are 78 of those. So most of these themes are in E flat or B flat, major, minor, Dorian, Lydian, whatever, just to make it easy to transition between them, and I'll get into that more with the interlude in a second. Not all of these are in E flat or B flat, although most are. For example, the Ace of Cups you heard starts on a C minor 7th chord, and that works because that actually has the same notes as in E flat major plus a C in the root. Okay, so now we're on to the interlude music, and this is what plays in between the card definitions, so you're not just like staring at the cards in silence while you wait for your next definition to pop up. And this is a pretty simple, just repeating piano line, or that's what it's built on. It gets a little fancier later. And it's only a measure long because I wanted to be able to transition quickly into the card music at any time without having to wait too long. So let me play just a little piano part this is built on. It's very simple. Yeah, so you'll notice that is B flat and F, and then B flat and E flat, and that makes it easy to transition into those keys I mentioned before. And obviously just having this loop infinitely would be so boring and get so grating, so there is some stuff I did to make that more interesting, and this will play.
Okay, so
yeah.
I'm going to give you a quick tour of the interlude music, which is the music that plays between the card themes. So if we look here in Wwise, you'll see I have the playlist for interlude pulled up. And you can see here that there are two music segments within this. There's the interlude intro and the interlude. The interlude intro plays once, and then the interlude loops infinitely. So what are these? So let's go to the interlude intro first. So I got this pulled up. You can see just the one little segment right here. Play that for you. This is just the simple piano part, and this plays once. Okay, so yeah, pretty straightforward. So that plays once, and then we go into the looping interlude part. So this, you can see, this is the same piano part, but then it has other things that layer on top of it. So if we look here, we'll see high and low. Let me actually make these a little thinner. Okay, so you'll see on the side that these are blue, and there's more than one music segment in here, or music track in here, in this high and then in this low track. So essentially what this is a random subtrack. So that means whenever this plays, it'll randomly play one of these tracks, one of these audio files. And you'll notice that for each one I also left a blank track so that there's a chance that there won't be a high or low part. But basically there are different instruments, little parts that can play on top of the piano, and these only have B flat, C, E flat, and F, so we can very easily transition to a bunch of different keys, mostly B flat and E flat, major, minor, Dorian, what have you. So let me just play this a couple times for you so you can hear a couple different variations of it. So yeah, as you can see, those are just a couple, but they're all different kinds of combinations that can happen. And you might have noticed at the end of them, there are sometimes notes that play afterwards, like you can see it here. You know, the clarinet, this little red thing is the execue. So right when we hit this part in the track, the new iteration of the loop will begin. But as a post-exit, I sometimes have an extra note playing just for kind of musicality and making it so things flow a little bit better. So let me play it again. So yeah, you could hear it in the violin there. So yeah, let me just play what the whole thing sounds like now.
So there's the intro. Okay, that's kind of a good place to end. Just happens to have just the piano there. So, yeah, that's kind of basically how the interlude music works. Okay, so I'm going to give you a quick tour. It does this every time. Okay, there we go. So we have successfully gone to the next slide and not watched that same video again. So yeah, that is essentially how the interlude music works. Now I'm going to talk about how I transition from the interlude music into the card theme. So let me just play it without any sort of transition, where it just goes straight from the interlude into a card theme. And this is the theme for the High Priestess, in case you're curious. Okay, so yeah, you could probably kind of hear how that didn't flow very well. It was kind of like the interlude music stopped and the card theme began, rather than being kind of one fluid piece. Let me play it one more time just so you can hear that. So yeah, and let me show you now how I do it in the game, and it's by adding a very simple piano part that's just one beat. So you probably heard the difference there. I'll play it one more time. Yeah, so you can hear I just added 2 little piano notes there on the very first beat where the High Priestess music comes in, but that makes it so it's actually a smooth transition rather than just going from one piece to another, if that makes sense. So yeah, the transition bits are very simple. I have them baked into the actual audio files of the card themes rather than having them set up as like a transition in Wwise or something. So yeah, they can be either B flat and E flat or B flat and F, just depending on the key of the card theme, whatever matches with that. Also, we talked about how in the interlude music, the stuff like the clarinet and violin and so on had a note that would sometimes play on the first beat of the next measure. That continues even if it's going into the card theme, just so we're not suddenly cutting anything off or anything like that. Okay, and this is a little video where I'm going to show how those transitions work. So now I'm going to show you how the interlude transitions into a card theme. And the card theme I'm going to be using Strength. It's very obvious when the last little piano note is, and then the theme starts. And then also at the end, it's very obvious when the theme stops and when it goes back into the interlude music. So you'll see here I'll be choosing, I have little states set up that are tied to each theme and each game state basically. So I'll start with interlude and then you'll see me change it to strength and you'll hear the music follow accordingly. So let's go.
So yeah, and you might have noticed that I clicked back to interlude pretty early on in the strength piece. That's because I have it set up so that no matter when you change the state while a card theme is playing, it'll still play to the end of the piece. So that's why it didn't just switch back to the interlude right away. But yeah, that's kind of how the transitions between the interlude music and the card theme music sounds.
Okay. I just noticed that you couldn't see the drop-down menu for me choosing the states during that, so sorry about that. Oh, I did it. I didn't play the video. That's the first time I've ever done that successfully. All right. Anyway, so that is the reading phase. You get your 3 cards and you hear the theme for each one and you hear that interlude music in between them. Then after the reading phase, we go into what I call the generative phase. And this is where instead of the cards playing individual themes, they all work together to create a unique piece of music. So I'm not going to be showing any Wwise stuff for this because when I try to show my Wwise section for this part, it's really complicated and I feel like this. So we're just going to do audio demos this time. So there are some basic rules that the generative music always follows. Everything is in F, major, minor, or Dorian. This is because if we're switching keys all willy-nilly, it can be a little grating, sound a little weird. So this is just to keep it sounding coherent. Each is the same time signature and BPM. This is because I create this music by layering different stems on top of each other, like different instruments, essentially. So if things were playing in different key signatures, or not key signatures, time signatures or tempos, it would just be complete chaos and not sound like a coherent piece, or cohesive piece. And then each section of music is always the same number of bars, and that's for the same reason, because I'm layering stuff on top of each other and I just need to make sure that it all fits together. Okay, so the music is built out of these building blocks and they work both horizontally and vertically, and I will explain what that means in a second. But for horizontal, this is essentially different segments of music that play one after another. So the first thing you hear is the intro, and that's about 5 bars, I believe. Yeah, 5 bars. Then there is a section that's mostly based on whatever your first card is. That's 16 bars. A 16-bar card 2 section, a 16-bar card 3 section, and then we end on a little vamp, just a little 2 measures that repeat until the player decides whether they want to hear their piece again or whether they want to go to the credits. And I just realized I forgot to tell you what is going on visually in this section. So while this music is happening, the game is generating a little music video for you, and that's mostly made of clips of old silent films, that kind of thing. None of that's ready, so that's why I'm not showing you any of that yet. But yeah, those are also, the clips are chosen, the film clips are chosen based on your cards. Anyway, back to this. Those horizontal building blocks are then built out of vertical building blocks, and these are different layers of music that all go on top of each other. So there is the main accompaniment, and this is the same instrumentation throughout the entire piece. This is kind of what makes it feel cohesive rather than a couple different pieces thrown together based on the different cards. And then you will sometimes hear a viola melody. Our violist Drew Ford is amazing, and so no matter what your cards are, you'll always hear viola in each section. It's kind of the featured instrument. And then there are also non-viola melodies, and sometimes they also do like counter melodies or high accompaniment when the viola is taking the melody. And the instrumentation of these is actually variable, and I will get into that in a minute. Okay, so here is the data that the game collects to then make the music with. So the first thing it takes stock of is the suit majority. So this is whatever suit there is the most of in your reading. So you can have mostly cups, mostly pentacles, mostly swords, mostly wands, or mostly major arcana. One other possibility is that each of your cards is a different suit. That actually happens a lot. So there's also an option for no majority. And what this does is it picks the instrumentation of the accompaniment, of the main accompaniment. Oh, there's a siren. I hope y'all can't hear that. And then the other thing it takes account of, another thing, is the individual card suits. So what this takes, or what this determines, is what instrument is playing the non-viola melody during each card's little section. So, once again, pretty obvious what the options are: cups, pentacles, swords, wands, or major arcana. And then there are these things I made called thematic groups. Now, there are 13 of these, each with 6 cards, and these I made kind of just based on the card meanings. These determined the actual melodies that play and also the chord progressions that are happening both in the melodies and the harmonies. There are 4 different card progressions, and there are a couple groups that fall under each progression. So 2 of them are in major keys. Major 1 is a little more like straight up happy, whereas major 2 has a little more bittersweet. Like I threw in more minor chords in that one. But major 1, the groups that fall under this key are joy, love, and new beginnings. And then the groups for major 2 are positive emotions, strength, leadership, and material wealth. Another option is Dorian mode, and the ones that fall under this are rest, ambition, and the miscellaneous ones, the ones that I couldn't figure out what group to put in, so I was like, you can all go in this one. But yeah, Dorian mode, for those of you that don't know, it's like minor, but the 6th is raised, so it essentially sounds like a piece in minor, but then there are surprising happy chords sometimes. And then, of course, there is an option for minor for the more sad cards. And those groups are tragedy, mistakes, and negative emotions. Yeah, so I know this is a lot, so I am going to kind of walk you through everything. So, like I said, we start with an intro, which is 5 bars, you can see there. Viola melody and non-viola melody aren't playing yet. That's what the X's mean. So we got the accompaniment playing, the main accompaniment, and the instrumentation of that, like I said, is determined by the suit majority, as will be the instrumentation for the accompaniment all the way down. For the intro, I only did open 4ths and 5ths, so it can easily transition into either major, minor, or Dorian. And then, so we got card 1 here. So the accompaniment chord progression it follows depends on what thematic group the card is in. As I mentioned in the last slide, there are 4 possibilities for keys. And then the melody, the non-viola melody will start playing here, and that melody is determined by what specific thematic group it is. So for each key there are 3 or 4 possible melodies, and then the instrumentation of this melody is determined by the suit of card 1, whatever this individual card suit is. Then for the second half of the card 1 section, still doing the same stuff for accompaniment, but we have a viola melody come in, and that melody is determined by the thematic group again of the card 1. And then the non-viola switches to like a counter melody or accompaniment, and that's still determined by whatever thematic group it's in, and the instrumentation is still based on card 1, so it's the same. So yeah, then we kind of do the same thing for card 2 and card 3, where the chord progression for the accompaniment and the melodies is determined by whatever thematic group the card is in. The instrumentation of the non-viola melodies is determined by what suit the individual card is, and then the melodies themselves are determined by the thematic group. And so we got card 2, card 3, same thing. And then it ends on a vamp, which is just accompaniment, and it's just playing open fourths and fifths again. And this just repeats until the player decides whether they want to listen to their music again or if they want to go to the credits. So these are the chord progressions, and I'm not going to get super in depth on this. But one thing I wanted to note is that if you look at like the first and last chords of each little section's progression, they either end on like an F, or start and end on like an F, a B flat, or a C. This is the 1, the 4, and the 5, for those of you who know music theory of each key. And basically that just means that when we switch to the next section, it won't sound too weird or jarring. So like if we were gonna go from like major for card 1 and then minor for card 2, it would transition pretty smoothly. Okay, so now we are finally going to listen to some of this music instead of just listening to me rambling a million times. So this is the reading that this particular music will be for. Saying this is a past, present, future reading. The star represents kind of a period of hope and renewal and that kind of thing. For present, death, unfortunately, represents like something coming to an end and not necessarily in a happy way. And then Queen of Swords is someone who's very bright, very sharp, very honest, just goes after what she wants. So overall, what I would say for this reading, how I would interpret it, is you had a period where you were feeling super hopeful and great, but unfortunately now you're dealing with something coming to an end, which is upsetting. But that is going to spur you to kind of use your smarts and your strength to kind of go after what you want. Okay, so we are going to hear, since this has mostly major arcana, we're going to hear the major arcana accompaniment, which is harp and organ, kind of representing the like divine big nature of the major arcana cards. The star is in the positive emotions thematic group, so we're going to hear the melodies from that, and that is the major 2 chord progression. And then since the star is major arcana, we're going to hear harp take the non-viola melody. Death is in the tragedy thematic group, which is minor. So we're going to hear that chord progression and the melodies from tragedy. Since it's still major arcana, we're still going to hear harp for the non-viola melody. And then the last card is Queen of Swords, so we are going to hear the ambition thematic group melodies. That is Dorian mode chord progression. And since this is swords instead of major arcana, we're going to do a switch in instrumentation from harp to Worley for the non-viola melodies. So let me play this through, and I will kind of circle whatever section we're on once we get to it. Okay, so that was that. So you can kind of hear that it's generative, sort of, but I've also obviously like pre-composed most of the melodies and stuff to keep it musical. So now we are going to do a similar reading, but different enough that you'll definitely hear a difference. So this one, doing past, present, future again. For past, we have the Ace of Cups. We listened to the theme for this one earlier. This is like a sudden burst of artistic inspiration or love coming into your life, just something really good emotionally happening to you. Then for present, we have the Queen of Swords again, the smart go-getter lady. And then for future, we have the Ten of Cups, which kind of represents fulfillment and feeling like you've reached your happily ever after, even if it's not forever. Just a feeling of being satisfied, being happy with the outcome of something. So for this reading, I would say you had this awesome burst of inspiration and love and good things happening into your life, and that really drove you to kind of think about what you honestly want out of life and go after it. And fortunately, that will pan out and you will feel fulfilled and be happy and that kind of thing. So hopefully you'll kind of hear a difference in the music, because the last reading was a little more mixed, a little darker, whereas this one's pretty happy overall. So some differences, you're going to hear the cups accompaniment this time, since this reading is mostly cups rather than major arcana. So the cups accompaniment is piano and strings, representing the kind of more soft, focused on beauty and love and stuff way that the cups are. So the Ace of Cups is in the positive emotions thematic group, just like the Star is from the last reading. So you're actually going to hear the same melody in the viola and in the non-viola. But since Ace of Cups is cups rather than major arcana like the Star, the non-viola melody is actually going to be played by the piano instead of a harp. Then card 2, we got Queen of Swords, once again, Dorian, Ambition Group, Worley for the non-viola melody. But since it's in position 2, the melody and chord progression are actually going to be different. It's still in Dorian mode and it still sounds similar, but since it's a different place in the piece, it's different chords, a different melody slightly. And then for card 3, we got the Ten of Cups, which is in the Joy thematic group, so you'll hear the melodies for that. It's the major 1 chord progression, which is the more straight up happy one. And since Ten of Cups is cups, the non-viola melody will be in the piano. So let me play this one, and once again I'll kind of circle with my cursor whatever part we're on. Alright, so that was that one. So you can kind of hear how, even sometimes with the same melodies and such, the feel can be very different. The suit majority for the accompaniment is especially important in how the overall piece feels. There are a couple rules I made for transitioning between the different sections. Faster, more lively melodies always get like a pickup note, so we're not just suddenly in a fast section with no warning. Some melodies have their last note coincide with the first note of a new phrase if it makes more musical sense to do so. So maybe there's like an F in the viola that holds out for the first measure of the next section. That I just have to make sure that the note doesn't clash with any of the chords that, any of the 4 chord possibilities that there are between the 2 major keys, the Dorian and the minor key. And then for my music theory folks, if a card's last chord is a 5, only the accompaniment can end on the leading tone. This is so I can resolve it properly. If the leading tone is in one of the melodies, there are 13 possible melodies for each section, so that would be me having to make sure that the leading tone resolves properly 13 times. Since there are only 4 possible accompaniments, just makes it a lot easier on my end to only have 4 that I need to resolve properly. Okay, so that is pretty much it. There is some more music that I didn't get to talk about that I wanted to let you know about real quickly. For the menu, there's actually not that much music. I have just kind of like ambient forest sounds, but I do have little bits of myself humming, like tiny little bits of melodies that occur throughout the game, and those will play randomly once in a while when you're in the menu. There is a transition piece between the reading and generative phases. I'm sad I didn't have time to show you guys that one, but just know that there is a transition that happens so it's smooth. It's not just like we go from the interlude and suddenly it's the generative music. And then for the credits music, I wrote what I call the Divinuet minuet. It's just piano, and it is going to change keys depending on overall how positive or negative your reading was. So that is it for my talk. If anyone has questions, I am going to look at the chat now, and I'm going to put myself back up. Hello, it's me. So yeah, there's some contact info and stuff there that you can look at. And real quick, I wanted to let you all know about some other people who have helped me out with Divinuet a lot. Saul Lutzi is the programmer. Jasmine Hayward is the writer. M. Gawerd is the sound designer. Drew Ford is the violist. And Pamela Coleman Smith did the art for the Rider-Waite Tarot deck, which is the deck I'm using. It was made in 1909. So yeah, let me pull up the chat now and look at questions, if there are any. Given a little time for the delay to see if anyone asks anything. Oh, people are saying nice things. Thank you very much. That's very nice of you. Oh gosh, my cat's meowing. Sorry if y'all hear that. Yeah, by the way, if any of y'all want these slides, you can just email me or reach out on Twitter and I will send them to you. Okay, so Super MC Gamer asked, what sort of projects are you looking forward to in the future? Well, there's a lot of stuff that I still have to do for this, a lot of music. I'm also doing music for a game by Divinuet's programmer, actually, Saul Lutzi. It's called Dross, and it's about building bugs, essentially. let's see. Great job. There seems to be some crossover here with sentiment analysis. Have you ever done any work in sentiment analysis while deciphering card themes? I'm gonna be real. I don't know what sentiment analysis means. Let's see. Did you say you also helped make the game? Yeah, so I am the game designer for this. I do some of the programming and stuff too, although Saul is definitely like the main programmer. So yes, I consider myself like the main designer on it. Are you only using exit cues for transitions, or do you ever use custom cues or on bar? Yeah, so sometimes I do other stuff. I have a couple custom cues that are more just like synth pads to kind of like make things a little fuller while things are transitioning. Do you consider this a spiritual successor to your previous game, Interview? Yes, I guess I do. So Interview is the first game I made, and I made it just to prove that I knew how to do interactive music, and it's a game where you're asked these existential interview questions, and there are different layers of music that come in depending how you answer. And I liked making it so much that I decided to make another, much more complicated game. Let's see. I love that you codified some of your rules for transitions, such as the importance of pickup phrases leading into major melodies. Any resources you'd recommend for other dynamic music composers? When I've composed dynamic music, I feel like I'm making things up as I go. Me too. I'm trying to think. I saw a really good talk by Penka Kuneva. I don't know if I'm saying her name right. And I don't know if that's like available online anywhere, but she did a really good talk, so I would look to see if she maybe has anything online. Audio Kinetic has some really good stuff about like interactive music on their website and kind of how that works. That's another good one. Just random YouTube tutorials, which I wish I do more specific people I could point to. But yeah, if you ever have any questions, you can feel free to like email me or hit me up on Twitter. I'm happy to help. Sentiment analysis is when you classify language as positive, negative, or neutral, which is similar to your major, minor, Dorian classifications. Gotcha. That's really interesting. I've never done it, but I will have to look that up because that sounds cool. Let's see. Let's give it a little bit more time to see if any other questions come in. Or maybe we just end 10 minutes early and that's okay. Will I get in trouble? I don't think so. But yeah, I'll see if any other questions come up. You all enjoying VGM together? Fmod versus Wwise. So I use Wwise. And the reason for that is that when I was doing just film composing and wanted to transition into doing game music, the person I was talking to was like, you should learn this software named Wwise. So I did, and then it turned out that there is another one called Fmod that I haven't tried yet, but I've heard that it's very good, and I want to try it sometime. But yeah, that's why I use Wwise, just because that's the only one I knew about when I was first starting out. So yeah, I think I will wrap it up here. Thank you to VGM Together for having me, and thanks to everyone for watching. And y'all should stick around for the diversity panel after this because it's going to be great. All right, bye everyone. Have a good night.